You see, that's the first thing we should address, right? The reason why the national language is Malay, like we took their land, dude. Like, so we gotta give them some respect, right? Place of respect that we should never change.
I feel like I'm really scared. Welcome back to Wise and Shine. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut.
And I'm Dawn, SG Budget Babe. Today, as usual, we have dethroned Eric because he's not here. But instead, we've gotten someone very interesting and with a lot of controversial opinions. He is
Sheikh Amar, that property guy.
Yeah, Sheikh not that interesting anymore because he keep coming on the show. But this is a different segment. Right?
Yeah. Today is not about property. That's why I love it.
Yeah, enough.
But somehow I'll find a way to spin it about
Don't
property.
please control. I mean, you are that property guy, but
the
please.
topic today had nothing to do with property.
Nothing to do with property. But okay, maybe it will somehow, right?
Yeah.
But today we want to focus on this idea of bilingualism, right? The question is bilingualism a must? Right? Because I think as we are refreshing the social compact, right? There's a lot of discussion around language and building a cohesive society.
Mm-hmm.
And recently in Parliament there was a question, right? Posed to who was it posed to?
Josephine Teo.
okay. Posed to Miss Josephine Teo about do you think we should set English tests for new migrants? Is that the question? Something along those lines, right?
Advocating that a test of English should be applied before someone can be considered for permanent residency and citizenship. Is he advocating a position or he's merely asking a question?
Yes. Those are newer citizens or those applying for PR. Should we have an English proficiency
Should we have
test?
an English proficiency test?
Which is the basic requirement for a lot of other countries, like Canada, UK. They all make sure that you can understand English, right? There's a basic test. Or you have something of relevance, like of similar certification, like Cambridge. Then you don't have to do the English test.
So what was her reply?
Why you must ask me? why do I have to be the one?
he caught it.
That's
why,
the MP.
What happened?
Something along the lines of every day she's on the ground and she feels that there are a lot of people who can't speak a word of English but are very well integrated into our Singapore society, which I think it's, on my opinion, as a minority, very unfair. Considering there are so many situations where I'm trying to order something, I'm trying to buy a certain thing, and I'm talking to that person, and the person doesn't understand a word of English. I want to get maybe possibly a rubbish bag from this shop, and this guy doesn't understand what I'm asking him, So I gotta wait for the Chinese person, the kind person to, hey, can you help me translate? Hey, can you help me say to this guy? So, I mean, if we are pushing for things like Forward Singapore and multiracial, and we are in a very scary situation, Reggie. We are in a space where now in TikTok, everybody's very sensitive about everything. Right?
In what? Sensitive about what?
Okay, everybody's very tense. We are in a space where no longer does anyone, number one, care about what's the place we go to protest?
Hong Lim Park.
Hong Lim Park is just a symbol now. Anything you want to say, you can blow it up on social media.
Yeah.
So a lot of information, a lot of things that are causing a lot of tension are now easily accessible. These topics are easily accessible to the large majority of Singapore. So in this kind of situation, what we can understand is that we have to be very careful about how we progress as a country. I think that's the issue here, is that how do we not allow this kind of tension to happen? And one of the ways is to make sure that people are well integrated, because these are the kind of things that can get people very upset very quickly.
But maybe she's talking about the old uncle downstairs.
Yeah, but the old uncle also bilingual.
Shout out to you, old uncle.
Would he be listening to
last time,
a lot of angry old uncle in our comment feed. Have you not seen those? Right, the SRS video?
Yeah. So, I mean, even the old uncle is bilingual. He understands Malay at least,
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the localized ones.
Yes.
But what I'm referring today is the 30, 40-year-old newer citizens. Clearly, you're not a Singaporean by birth. You're not a Singaporean by birth. You clearly you come from another country. And a Malaysian PR also would definitely understand English.
Malaysian PR trilingual.
Yeah, trilingual.
Basic is trilingual.
Everything can. You know?
Yeah, everything can.
Yeah. So for my people like my mom and all that who are in their 60s, very fluent in English. So why is it that a similar person of the majority race can live her entire life in Singapore not having to speak a word of English and not be affected? Like her quality of life is not affected.
Okay, so then is bilingualism a must? Is it a factor of success? Are we talking about it as like, if you are bilingual, you are successful? Or are we talking about it from an angle of like, it's part of the social fabric, like you must have law, like it's a basic. Is it like basic or is it like important? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's more of like social integration. Like it has to be a compulsory factor when you want to bring someone in as a citizen for social integration, so that everybody can have quality of life, by your contribution to this country. In that sense, if you come into this country, you got to contribute, the very least be able to speak to everyone.
I get where you're coming from. So it's like the working language in Singapore. There must be one working language that ties everyone together, which is English.
Yes.
But the national language is Malay.
Yeah. How many people even know?
I'm a Singaporean, I cannot speak Malay.
How many people? Oh, okay. I have reached a level where I can order food, right? So I'm quite proud about it. Like when the makcik behind talk, I was like, okay, I kind of understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel proud about it. But anyway, that's a different story.
And you get a discount, so that's quite good as well.
Hopefully, I get discount, right? Or get more portion, right? Yeah. Right.
Every Singaporean knows this. If you want to order nasi padang at a discount, you got to speak in Malay. If you try to say, I want one rendang, gone.
Yeah.
You be like $4.
Yeah, the auntie be like, sayang. Yeah. It's like, oh.
You got to flirt.
Yeah. You got to start, right? But okay. So I think another anchor that we need to clarify is all bilingualism the same? Or is there one standard combo which is English and Mandarin? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, because sometimes like we say mixed race or mixed something, like what is considered mixed, right? Like it's like same with this idea of bilingualism, like what is considered bilingual in Singapore society?
I think the difficulty comes about because our national language is Malay, but the majority working language is English. But yet at the same time, for a lot of the older generations who didn't grow up being educated in English-speaking schools, they have been speaking and operating in Chinese or Mandarin, and it has worked.
Or in their ethnic language, essentially.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
So it's because of this tussle between the different generations and groups, and yet what the national language is. That's why it's so difficult to accept, and that's why all that furor is happening, right? That why should they have to take a language test? I mean, if you ask an outsider, should you have to take an English proficiency test for a country where the national declared language is Malay? It makes no sense. Right?
You see that's the first thing we should address, right? The reason why the national language is Malay, like we took their land, dude. Like, so we gotta give them some respect, right? I think that's where we are at. It's like we come in here, we as migrants from the British, and clearly, yeah, we took their land. So I think that is a symbolism, is a place of respect that we should never change. Yeah.
I feel like I'm very scared. No, but I know what you're saying.
But yeah, so like on that topic, I think we need to first educate on why the national language is Malay. It's essentially because we take the land. So
yeah.
So we gotta respect that, but that doesn't mean that we should be forced to speak that language.
No, and I don't think we are forced. That's the thing. I feel like firstly, people don't even think that the national language is Malay.
A lot of people don't know.
As much as it is enshrined, right? That our military command, our national anthem, all this is in Bahasa, but no one realized that, or like it's not a conscious thing. Like, hey, our national language is Malay.
Yeah.
No, it's not, right? So I think we can on that level we can push that away in the sense of like, okay, it's a fun fact, but I don't think it really affects people's mind. It's more like we assume that English is the operation, right? It's the language operation. Like we operate in the language, and then there's that plus something.
Yeah.
Right. So it can be plus Mandarin, plus Tamil, plus Bahasa or plus whatever lah. Right.
Yeah.
So does it make a difference that you are plus different thing? Like is Mandarin superior?
Yes. Coming from the property standpoint as an agent, The amount of times I've received this remark, and it frustrates me so often because it's very there's an undertone of racism to it, is that you should learn Mandarin. Very good. You can do better. Like it's easy to say when you are of Mandarin speaking background, right? You can say that. But if you say it to a minority, it's a little like a low blow,
No, but
like,
shit, is it a matter of fact? In that sense, right? In the sense that what the guy say is, you should learn Mandarin, you will do better.
Yeah.
And the interesting part is, on some level, it is a matter of fact. And that is I think that's the bigger qualm over there.
I think the issue here is, why is it a matter of fact? Why is it that we, in a multiracial, multilingual society, is it it's multilingual?
Multilinguistic,
yeah, multilingual society, why is it we are forced to learn one specific language to benefit more?
Wait, okay, so I ask you, right, if let's say today I speak Tamil, right, like
No benefit to you.
Ratri and video, I know. Okay. So it's like, if today I speak Tamil,
Yeah.
does it not give me benefit in...
Not much, because most Indians will be able to understand English if they want to survive in Singapore.
No, it's not about surviving, but does it not give you a feel good? Like,
I guess you can connect
that you
with them.
took
The
the
rapport is
effort to
better.
learn their language.
It will feel
right?
good. It will
because
feel
all the
good.
politicians try to do that. Everybody opening speech, they only know that 2 words only. Right? Everybody also try to do that, right? So on some level, we cannot deny that you feel good, right? And if you feel good, then does it, like even in the Chinese community, like if you can speak a bit of Teochew with the auntie, right? Or like Hokkien with the uncle, it also like add points, So on some level, it does help you do better. And I don't see why it's a, you know what I mean? Like,
If we look
there's
at
an ideal
language
state.
as a communication
Yeah,
tool, right?
yeah.
The more languages you can speak,
Mm.
the more channels of communication you open up.
Yeah.
The more markets, the more audiences you
Yeah,
open up.
yeah.
Hence, it is definitely beneficial.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, on a practical note, I think it is a matter of fact, right? And I understand like the ideal world that we want to move towards, right? Which is great. I think we are aligned on that, trying to move towards there, right? But the reality is, I find it so hard to ask people to like forget your racial background, like forget where you come from. And by extension means no matter what people do to try to like, cuddle up to you a little bit, you know, to make you feel like, hey, I know you, doesn't add points, because that runs counter to human, in at least in my understanding. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think the situation comes from the viewpoint of someone has to learn Mandarin to excel in Singapore. You understand?
I know what you're saying. I know what
Right?
you're
You
saying.
don't have to. It's a choice. You could make do with life. You could live life comfortably without ever learning to speak a word of Mandarin. But if you want to do really well in business, in sales, you got to learn Mandarin.
Okay, but to be fair, if we look at it from a numbers perspective, it makes sense, right? Because when you are able to communicate with a majority or more people because you are speaking that language, you're opening up that avenue, that opportunity for yourself. It's the same logic as when I was studying in the US and I couldn't speak Mexican.
Yeah.
But when I started to learn how to speak their language,
Spanish, right?
Yeah, Spanish. I could then when I went for my Mexico trip, I could then communicate with a bit more locals compared to where I was in the earlier stage when I had first arrived. So, but it just happens that, and that's because the state I was in, they were very close to Mexico.
Yeah.
So I had to learn that language and it's not really, I don't really see it as a racism thing, but I think it's just, you look at where the numbers are bigger and hence you ask yourself, if you want to you want to be part of that market, that opportunity, communicate with this audience, then you just need to learn how to speak their language.
That's the fair point, you see. But here is where things get a little bit complicated. One is that...
And we're not cornering you.
No. Like, see, it's very interesting because that is the US, right? But this is Singapore, where it's a multiracial society.
But even though it's multiracial, we all know the fact is that there are certain races that are more in numbers.
That is true. So, but we want to identify as a multiracial society. So hence the way forward should be the one language that everybody can speak. Now, where Pritam is coming from is the fact that this is not being this not being enforced, right? So we are reaching a situation where more and more younger, newer citizens that are being given the citizenship or the PR come here, open up businesses, and not be able to speak a word of English. We can
I
accept the
understand the
older
rage
generation.
already. It's
Yeah.
the disconnect because you say one thing, multiracial, but you
Yeah.
practice another thing.
It-
Hello?
like,
That's the disconnect, right?
Yeah, that's the disconnect, right? And
Got it.
we can accept the older generation, the auntie and uncle, at the market. They can speak Malay and they can speak basic English. But what happens when you see an entire signboard? Okay, as a Muslim, this doesn't affect me. But Hindus who can eat non-halal food could walk into a food court and look at an entire signboard that's completely in Mandarin. Absolutely not a word of English on it. And just price point. And you gotta decide from photos what do you want. In a multiracial, multilingual society, how is that allowed still?
Okay, but we must be clear that there's a difference between like racism and like racial sensitivity or like racial awareness, right? In a sense that like we are vividly clear, that there's a lot of Chinese people. We are also vividly clear that some Chinese restaurants, they just want to serve Chinese people, right? Like that is their option, but are they being racist, right? Because the anchor of racism, the anchor of racism is when your choice is solely dependent on race, right? It's like whether I hire you or whether I work with you is because Sheikh, you are Indian, that's it. Right? And not like there is a racial awareness to it. It's like when I'm in Malaysia, right? Like I also need to pick up Malay, right? Because that is the predominant group there. Like if I don't, I can live in Bangsa lah, like in the enclave in Hartamas, right?
Yeah.
Or the expat down there, like early morning Beverly Hills like that, right? I can, but if I want to integrate with the local culture, with the local community, should I not pick it up? You know what I mean? Like should I not try to be multilingual in that sense?
Correct.
Right? And I
I
think
guess the question here now is that a lot of it now is being left up to individual choice.
yes.
And the individual gets to decide, like in your case, whether you want to learn that particular language, that working language, in which case Singapore will use English. But your hope as a minority race is that you would want it to be enforced more so that Singapore can then truly live up to its reputation of being multiracial. Instead of letting the individual decide, you know what, I'm going to come into a multiracial society, but I don't want to speak the language.
Yeah.
Is it?
To me, that's how we can enhance the social integration, the multiracial and the whole fact that we are as a multiracial country, we are able to progress as one. One of the easiest way to do it is to enforce one language. The universal language of the world, which is English, right? Which is what every country, everyone speaks. Even in countries like Germany, right? Even in Germany, everyone speaks German over there. But yet the signboards are still in English, right? You still see like the word there is a English translation below. In Malaysia as well, don't go so far. Malaysia as well, English word below.
Here
Why?
got no translation. Man.
Here is Singapore lah. I mean, here Singapore. Here is English. Is like the actual.
Oh, okay.
Like,
So
we don't have another
we don't even
language.
bother
Right? We don't put
translating.
Malay
Okay.
right? So
Okay lah, this is the MRT have lah. They try to do a bit. That's why
Yeah.
very long. The whole announcement. Actually, could have been one line, become like 2 pager, right? Yes.
So I think that's like what we do with the MRT is what we should do with like a lot of other parts of Singapore, like things like food signs and things like enforcing proficiency tests in for newer citizens. Because what will happen when we do not do that is that if we just leave it, then we start to see a large majority of newer citizens coming in, not being integrated, continuing to speak only one language. Then how do we as Singaporeans, right, me and you, like how do we integrate into that situation, especially for the minorities, right?
From
How
a
do
communication standpoint, I can agree, especially I think because we cannot run away from the fact that, the birth rate is going down. So the government has little to no choice but to import foreigners into our country, right? So I can see where you're coming from. So we need them to have a certain, we need them to be tied to us, at least by having a common language, because that way then we also kind of reduce the tensions, reduce miscommunication, because at least you have something in like you try to talk Chinese versus you try to talk Malay only or Tamil, it's very hard to communicate.
Yeah.
right?
And-
The tonalities and everything will also differ so much. But if you learn to speak each other's language, or at least one common language that ties all of you together, then a lot of issues can potentially be resolved easier.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying Wise and Shine so far. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and for us to continue to do this show so that you become a tad bit wiser every week, you gotta like, share, subscribe, help us beat the algorithm. But even more importantly, if you can, comment in the comment section below. Let us know your thoughts and also some questions that you would love us to answer. Yeah, now back to the show. Wait, so what I'm hearing here is that this is like a social basic, like basic key like that. That even if you put in the extra effort, like let's say if you put in the extra effort, maybe you're listening now, you're still in school, which I don't think so, or maybe you grew up in school and you only monolingual, like English only. And then now you're thinking like, should I take night class, double down, download Duolingo or whatever, and learn another language? Is it not a factor of like stronger success? Like because now it feels like the discussion is like, oh, okay, it's basic, right? If you cannot do multilingual, then why you here, right? How are you gonna live here? But is it gonna set you apart, the very fact that you are bilingual? Or like actually bilingual, not like half fuck both sides, and then like try to act like you bilingual, like what I'm saying, right? Because it's like,
definitely. I mean, learning more languages has always been one of the benchmarks of personal development, right? Improving yourself, and you definitely are going to benefit from every language that you learn and you are more proficient with. So I think the issue here today is the more of on a social level, like what you mentioned. And like to add to her point, this is something that not only minorities suffer, like based on what she said. And really, like I know of Chinese friends that I have that struggle with this because they don't speak the language that well themselves. Their Mandarin is also they only learned it in school. They learned it to pass the O levels, and that's it. Some of them even take the syllabus B. Is it? Yeah. So,
don't say you do Mandarin if you do syllabus B. I tell you.
Yeah. So they struggle. Like I've seen them struggle. I'm like, you're the most useless Chinese friend I have. Like, what's the point of having you? You also cannot communicate with like cuckoo birds sit down together.
I thought I could rely on you, say, right? But you horrible.
My mother said go make friends in Chinese. Walao.
What's going on?
Yes, this is something that younger generations who are not really very strong in their culture and their language are also going to not benefit from. This is going to be at a disadvantage for them. So Mandarin is not an easy language that you can pick up. Like
it's very hard.
Like Bahasa, like Malay is very easy. Most people can speak basic Malay, or they would understand what the person is saying and they can reply back in English. But with Mandarin, it's really tough,
It is.
So
isn't Tamil very hard also?
Tamil is insane.
Yeah.
But I'm still sending my kids to learn Tamil instead of their mother tongue because culture. You got to have a little bit of culture in the house. So like at least we lock them in with the language over there. Thankfully, my wife's Malay, right? So it's easy for them to pick up that language as well. But to put them through Mandarin in school, I think the hard part is they don't have a space to practice it at home. Then it becomes a bit tough. Like you can maybe speak to your grandma or your mom and your family, but when they come home, bro, I look at their homework, so I don't know how to teach them. Has to be tuition. So that is the issue. But yes, I do agree with you, dude. Like if they are able to learn Mandarin, they would definitely do well. In business, in career. I know how often we see, till today, we see like job applications on everywhere. They say Mandarin speaking only. So how's that like? It's really tough, right? Like the job is accounting. Why you need to talk?
Because they are Chinese stakeholders.
Your Chinese clients. I understand the idea of like multiracialism, and I don't think we're in a dispute, right? But if China continues to grow, which looks like it will happen, then this also increasingly becomes this is a global pressure now. It's like all the half-fuck Chinese people now trying to do Chinese also. They also trying to brush up. They be like, "Hey, lama, why so slow?"
Yeah.
It's like,
But have you spoken to an Alibaba supplier before?
You mean like the AliExpress style? Okay, please go.
They speak brilliant English.
Yeah, that's true too.
I wouldn't know that. I communicate with them in Chinese. 亲,你要什么? Everything is 亲.
Yeah, you get a WeChat and they're talking to you in perfect English. I have an Alibaba supplier. Her name is Doris. Amazing
No,
English.
I think that's because you get exposed to Alibaba suppliers who also does business with the American market.
American market, yeah.
So they have to be good at English in order to crack that market. But
Yeah.
maybe the ones that I speak with are the ones who only serve the China market.
Yes.
Hence, they don't speak
Which
English
is our
to me.
1688, right? So like that's the local suppliers. Those are the ones that deal with only people who speak Mandarin and also within their local market. Yeah, but you see, like the context is really, if you want to, that should be the direction, right? Like if you want to expand to the world and you want to grow as a country in the world, you got to learn the world's language.
I think we also must differentiate the fact that the Alibaba suppliers who can speak English, their prices are higher than the Alibaba suppliers who
Yes.
speak Chinese.
Of course.
So it's also which market,
Yeah.
which market you want to play with. If you want to play in the English market, the Chinese market, you just gotta learn that language, gotta speak that language. You want to play in a different market, then you go where the language of communication is. Yeah, but it's just whichever your choice, I believe there will always be a market for it. It's just how big the market is and whether you're satisfied with that size or you want to go even bigger.
Yeah. So do you think then you are penalized if you only do English in Singapore? That means you monolingual.
You still cannot, right? The schools require you to be bilingual. You
Yeah.
still have to pick up.
I
a
mean,
mother
now
tongue.
got CLB, MLB, all those BBB, right?
Yeah.
You pass can already lah. Okay lah, I let you go lah.
I don't
You know what I mean?
think-
Like that. Do you get penalized if you're monolingual? Because there was a period of time, right, that I felt inferior that I'm multilingual.
really?
Serious? Because I grew up in a Chinese school, and then I went to a more Angmo school. Everybody speaks English.
I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
I think it benefits you, but we exaggerate that benefit. Like I do believe that you don't need to speak Mandarin to do extremely well in Singapore. You don't have to speak Mandarin to do extremely well. It can be frustrating if you don't. It would improve your quality of life. It will improve your business a little bit, but there are so many people who can't speak a word of Mandarin who do extremely well in business. You know, and like I personally have served so many PRC clients. I have no idea why PRC love Indians. Like it's so strange. They come to Singapore to buy a house, right? And they go for an Indian speaking person, and they can barely speak a word of English.
They don't trust the Chinese people.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's happening, but like I get so many PRC clients, and some of them I have to use Google Translate to talk to them. So, but it really is like. I would like that message to be out loud that you have the freedom to be monolingual if you want to be. Don't make it live your life a little bit with like don't have the anxiety that you gotta go pick up another language to survive. You know, like if a minority is listening out there, you can live your life happily. You know, you can be successful without it.
But it's also not universal, right? Like we are assuming that the monolingual that they know is English, right?
Yeah.
If the minority only does like Malay,
Yeah, then you have an issue.
we're like gonna struggle
Yeah.
so bad, right? In
So-
this society,
Yeah.
right?
So yeah, that's the frustration. That's where the anger comes from, right? The anger comes from the fact that I can't live my life knowing only my cultural language, but you can. The privilege is what we are upset over. So sorry to
No.
Those
I,
the
But
use
that's
the
because
P
their
word.
foreign
Yeah.
spouses bring money into Singapore, right? The whole anger comes about because, Singapore wants to court this foreign talent. Then their foreign spouse or partner comes in and that's the one who doesn't know how to speak English. This main person does.
there's
They
a lot
tag
of that.
along so the second one also gets to benefit and
There's a
can
lot
live
of that.
and get integrated but actually don't know English.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a
but
lot of
actually
that.
what people miss is that's because Singapore wants that partner skill or
Yeah.
money, capital, something that person brings to the table. It's just the spouse is a plus one.
No, it's not only that. You see, if today I were to snap a finger, for example, and you suddenly don't remember a word of English, how much of your life would change to survive? Talk about survival level. We don't talk about quality of life. Just survival level. How much of your life would change in Singapore if you suddenly couldn't speak a word of English?
The biggest change now is when you drive on the roads, can you actually understand the exits are going where? Lor?
Yeah.
You can. You drive in other countries. You don't know what the hell the signboard is saying. You still can find your way.
No, but in Singapore, if let's say I don't remember English anymore, and I don't remember that Toa Payoh is Toa Payoh, then how will I see the word Toa Payoh and know that's my home?
Okay, now we are playing on the
Right.
technicality. Let's just say you
Okay,
have Google
but-
Maps. You could follow the blue line.
So
and
all,
you can
all,
travel.
all that are
Fair,
nitty-gritties.
technology, okay.
Okay, just put survivability level. Like today, you go to you want to buy food. Do you have an issue?
Hey, now that you've given the answer, we can just use Google Translate for everything, right?
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
what you're
yeah.
saying.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. You're trying to see that perspective that there are other avenues, but you see, here's the difference. Like for me, the bottom line is that you can survive. 90% of like the shops outside you can buy and you can order in Mandarin. For me, if I can only speak Tamil, how the hell do I survive? Have you seen how frantic and how happy? If you ever had the opportunity to walk around with me one day, and if you see a foreign worker, right, lost and asking for direction, he's just frantic looking for a brown face so that he can speak in Tamil and ask me where the directions are. Because there's nobody who would ever be able to communicate with him to tell him where he's going to go, because he doesn't know how to speak any other language besides his Tamil. So you rarely see that with a person who can only speak Mandarin. Could happily walk up to the majority race. Like you said, you guys are everywhere, right? It is just by numbers, you guys win. It is that luxury that you have, that we don't have, that we want enforced so the future generation doesn't have to feel that way of suffering.
And so the enforcement manifests in the idea that you must take language tests when you want to be a
Yeah
citizen.
lah, basic
Okay,
minimum.
okay.
You know, it's a very like basic just learn English if you want to come here. You know, don't make it harder for us. Don't
I can
open
kinda
up a
see where you're
business.
coming from.
I
Because
get the idea.
this
yeah.
is
Yeah.
what the current situation is. And it's already frustrating enough. So you don't want this to be carried
Yes,
on. You don't want the
exactly.
next generation, your children,
Exactly.
to have to go through the same thing. Because
Exactly.
especially if they continue to import numbers that are not
100%.
of the minority races, this divide will become bigger,
yeah.
right? So the
Yeah.
frustrations will only grow. So
Yeah.
in order to stem it before it escalates,
Yes.
let's set in place operational language. English takes an English
Yeah.
proficiency test. That way, everyone is better off.
Yeah, even the Singaporean
right?
like mother who can't speak a word of English. You know, she's in her 40s, 50s right now. You know, she's a bit. She didn't really pick up the English language very well enough to teach her child. She, as a Singaporean mother, has to go and find tuition, English tuition for her kid, and force that person to learn so that the kid does well and is integrated into society. But yet we see imported people coming in, and they are not imported citizens coming in, and they have the privilege to not even speak the language. How is that fair to us as a Singaporean, majority or minority?
Yeah.
Right?
Fair, I agree. My bigger concern is my leave become a scripture. You know, like the announcement, wow, so many Vietnamese, Thai, everything. That's like, hey, enough,
Right.
say, enough. But okay.
Yeah, but this has been a very interesting discussion. I mean,
Yeah.
seeing from the different point
It's
of
so
view.
interesting.
Now
Yeah.
it almost makes me question, then why doesn't the government just
Just
make
do all,
this? Yeah,
make
just
a
do it.
test
Very
all.
difficult, man.
Yeah, like very difficult, man. To just do the test.
Are we oversimplifying?
No, is it
Yeah.
gonna? I think the idea is it gonna turn off people from coming in? And if
It
so,
really
then
is.
what's so bad about it? Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's the thing. So Singapore is on a very revenue, very on a business level. They are pushing it for that, right? It's all about the money. It's about a dollar and cents of why we need to import for our economy. But I think the generation now, especially if you see on places like TikTok, social media, the Gen Zs, the people who are aged 21, 25, they care very little about the economy. They care a lot about lifestyle, social integration. They care more about the people. What we see, like, you know, in places like Australia, you know, where these things like 4-day work week matters more to us. Family time matters more to us. So it's no longer about the generation that cared a lot about the economy, a lot about building businesses and growing. They are slowly, you know, we are aging population. They are still the majority, but it's shifting. You know, the vibes are shifting. The people and what makes them happy, their idea of happiness has completely changed. Like compared to the past, right? So these things matter more to us. Whether or not the person is able to be able to understand me, that matters more. My lifestyle in Singapore matters more than whether or not the economy does well. They don't really care about the economy that much. They would live in a life. Today, if you tell somebody property price HDB remain flat for the rest of eternity, happy. I would prefer that rather than it goes up to 800k. See how I turned it into property again.
Yeah, you see lah, tak boleh tahan, cannot. But I get it.
Faster, turn back.
I get
Let's
it.
go
Yeah,
somewhere else.
I get it. I think the world will shift, and I mean,
Yeah.
I've been talking about it, right? Essentially, your two main source of power is your vote and your money, right?
Yeah.
So as the young people come into the fray and become the a big serious voting bloc, then the thoughts and the narratives will shift also, right? So after listening to all this, I thought it was very interesting. But after listening to all the different angles, right? So do you think it's a must to be bilingual in Singapore?
Right now, yes.
Yeah.
If you can learn
With
Mandarin
English being one of the
Yes. So it's not
to-
all we established that not all bilingual is the same, right? Like if you know Tamil and Malay, it's actually not that strong. You are
Yeah.
bilingual, but
Yeah.
the
you
strength.
good as no lingual. You good as no lingual.
not we say one.
If you learn Tamil and Malay, you are shorter on the stick. Please go and learn English.
But at least English plus one more.
Plus one more,
Yes.
and the reality is still, if there is Mandarin in your one more,
It's better.
is better for you. Okay, yeah, it is a reality.
Based on numbers, not based on race.
Yeah, based on number. And I want us to be clear that being racially aware of what is around us, what is the permutation around us, what's the reality around us, and being subjected to racist reality or racist reaction is different, right? Where, I wore a shade because he Indian, that's it. No, right? It's a very different, different. I know it's a bit technical, but we are all jostling for the space, right? In trying to find, because the reality is, it is hard to live in a multiracial society, right? And we all want to make it work, right? And if we want to make it work, then
We need at least one common language
Yeah,
to
a
tie us
benchmark,
together.
yeah.
and a social narrative to tie us together, right? Thank you. Today's episode is not sponsored by. I feel like MSF should sponsor this, right? Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you.